Do you know why I stopped you today? It sounds harmless, casual, almost friendly. But right there, in the first 10 seconds of a traffic stop, a lot of people accidentally hand police the exact evidence they need. Yeah, I was probably speeding a little. I was texting for just a second. I only had 2 beers. Now the officer doesn't have to prove much because you already started building the case for them. So, what do you do when those lights come on behind you? What should you say? What should you never say? And can police legally use normal conversation against you? Absolutely. If knowing your rights matters to you, subscribe now, share this with someone who needs it, and drop your opinion below. That's why in this video, attorney Mark Lopez breaks down the psychological tactics officers use during traffic stops, the mistakes most drivers make without realizing it, and the exact calm phrases that can help protect your rights without escalating the situation. Because one sentence can completely change where that stop goes next. Here's the first thing you need to understand. Traffic stops are not just about traffic. For officers, they're fishing expeditions. A broken taillight can become a DUI investigation. A lane violation can become a drug search. A routine stop can become a criminal case. And the officer is trained to gather information immediately. That's why the questions often sound casual. Where are you headed? Coming from work? Have you had anything to drink tonight? Why were you driving so fast? They are not making small talk. They're collecting admissions. And most people talk way too much because silence feels uncomfortable. That's the trap. A lot of drivers think cooperating means explaining themselves. Legally, those are two different things. You can comply with lawful commands without volunteering evidence. Big difference. Let's start with the most common question of all. Do you know why I stopped you? Most people panic and start guessing. Was I speeding? I might have rolled that stop sign. I was looking at my GPS. Every one of those statements can help justify the stop or strengthen the officer's report later. Instead, keep it simple and neutral. Good evening, officer. Then provide your license, registration, and insurance if required in your state. That's it. If the officer repeats the question, you can calmly say, Officer, I'd prefer not to speculate. Why does that work? Because you are not lying, you are not arguing, and you are not making admissions. You're refusing to help build a case against yourself. That matters. Now let's talk about another major mistake people make, trying to talk your way out of the stop. People do this constantly. Officer, I swear I wasn't speeding. My wife is pregnant. I'm late for work. I only checked my phone for 1 second. The more emotional people get, the more they talk. And the more they talk, the more information officers collect. Remember this, anything you say can become part of the report. Anything you admit can later appear in court. So keep your answers short, polite, calm, minimal. Not rude, not hostile, minimal. Here's another situation. The officer walks up and says, "Mind if I take a quick look inside the vehicle?" A lot of people freeze here because the wording sounds optional and friendly. Mind if? Real quick? Just routine. But if you say yes, you may have just waived one of your strongest constitutional protections. Because consent changes everything. If you voluntarily allow a search, it becomes much harder later to challenge what officers found. And many people consent simply because they feel intimidated. So what should you say? Officer, I do not consent to any searches. That sentence is powerful because it is calm, clear, and legally important. Notice what it does not say. It does not insult the officer. It does not physically interfere. It does not resist. You are verbally refusing consent while remaining compliant. That distinction matters enormously. Now, here's something important. If officers claim they have legal authority to search anyway, do not physically stop them. Do not grab anything. Do not argue law roadside. Say this instead. I am not resisting, but I do not consent. Why is that phrase effective? Because later, your lawyer cannot argue you refuse consent if body cam footage shows you voluntarily agreeing. Your words matter. And so does your behavior. Which brings us to another huge problem during traffic stops: nervous movements. When people panic, they reach around the car, dig through bags, open compartments suddenly. Officers are trained to interpret unexpected movements as possible threats. That can escalate the stop fast. So if you need to reach for documents, communicate first. My registration is in the glove compartment. Then move slowly. No sudden movements, no aggressive gestures, no yelling. A calm driver looks safer. A safer interaction reduces risk for everyone. Now, let's talk about silence, because this is where people get uncomfortable. An officer might say, "So, what's the story tonight? You seem nervous. Have you had anything to drink tonight?" Many drivers think refusing to answer makes them look guilty. Legally, silence alone does not prove guilt, but talking can absolutely create evidence. So if questioning becomes investigative, you can calmly say, "I exercise my right to remain silent." Short, respectful, direct. Why is that important? Because simply staying quiet without clearly invoking your rights can become legally messy in some situations. Clear language matters. You are explicitly stating that you are choosing not to answer. That is different from being argumentative. Now, let's be realistic. Some officers may not like that answer. The atmosphere may become colder. The officer may become more formal. But protecting your rights is not about winning popularity points during the stop. It's about avoiding unnecessary self-incrimination. And this leads to another dangerous mistake people make: arguing law on the roadside. Never confuse the side of the road with a courtroom. Even if the stop feels unfair, even if you believe the officer is wrong, a traffic stop is usually not the place to fight that battle verbally, because escalation rarely helps you in the moment. Instead, focus on preserving your safety and your rights. Stay calm, stay respectful, do not physically resist, do not volunteer information. Then challenge unlawful conduct later through the legal system if necessary. Now, here's another phrase every driver should know. Am I free to go, or am I being detained? This question matters because it forces clarity. Sometimes officers continue extending stops through casual conversation after the original purpose of the stop is over. People stay talking because they assume they're not allowed to leave. But legally, there can be a major difference between a consensual encounter and a detention. If the officer says you're free to go, leave calmly. Do not restart conversation. Do not linger. Just leave. If the officer says you're being detained, then you know the stop is continuing officially. That legal distinction can matter later. Now, let's talk about one of the biggest traps during late-night traffic stops: DUI questioning. An officer may ask, "How much have you had to drink tonight?" People almost never help themselves with this question. "I only had one beer, just 2 drinks with dinner." Those statements are admissions, and officers are trained to observe not just your answer, but how you answer. Slurred speech, delay, confusion, inconsistency. Everything becomes evidence. This is why many defense attorneys recommend not answering investigative alcohol questions without legal counsel. If the situation escalates toward arrest or intensive questioning, clearly state, "I want to speak to a lawyer." That phrase matters because it invokes your right to counsel. Again, keep it calm. No shouting, no threats, no attitude. Calm professionalism protects you more than roadside arguments ever will. And here's something viewers need to understand. There is a difference between lawful commands and voluntary cooperation. If an officer lawfully orders you out of the vehicle, refusing may create additional legal problems depending on the circumstances and jurisdiction in your state. But answering every question voluntarily is different. That's why knowing the difference matters. Rights are most effective when exercised calmly and clearly, not emotionally, and definitely not aggressively. One final warning. Do not confuse YouTube confidence with real-world strategy. Some people see online videos where drivers scream constitutional phrases nonstop, insult officers, or escalate encounters for attention. That is dangerous. Your goal is not to win the traffic stop. Your goal is to get home safely while protecting your legal position. Those are not the same thing. So here's the safest framework to remember. Stay calm. Keep your hands visible. Comply with lawful commands. Do not consent to searches. Do not volunteer information. Ask if you are free to go. Clearly invoke silence or a lawyer if necessary. And remember, laws vary by state. Facts matter, and every situation is different. This video is educational information, not personal legal advice. But understanding these principles before the lights appear in your mirror can completely change how a traffic stop unfolds. Because once words leave your mouth, you usually cannot take them back. And in the next video, attorney Mark Lopez breaks down what officers legally can and cannot do once a canine unit arrives at your vehicle during a traffic stop, including the mistake that gives police extra time to keep you